Good rainy Saturday morning, I think it is. Seems like every time we start this, we start with rain, but you guys can look out the window there. It's coming down pretty good, and you can see, if you haven't seen our other video where we're probably actually behind on those videos, so you may see this one first. So sneak peek. So there's a new apple orchard up by the school bus. Anyway, we've gotten a lot of our parts. We've had a couple issues. One company I used to buy parts from said everything was in stock. I got 2-day shipping. Hasn't shipped yet. We got a holiday weekend. We're leaving for Pennsylvania. No time, no pressure, you know, whatever. So I ended up getting another company that I had actually. So the company I originally went with didn't have the input shaft. So I went with this transmission parts distribution, and they actually are extremely quick to ship. So I've got my new input shaft, I got my new range selector, and I got all my parts. I got a new pump, but I'm missing a bearing. So Murphy's Law, you know how that goes. Kit comes, it's supposed to come with 3 bearings, it comes with 2. I have one coming from the local auto parts store Tuesday, and I may have another whole transmission kit coming Tuesday, we'll see. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start reassembling. One of the things we left off with was we still had the main shaft intact, and we had all this as an assembly, and I told you we'd probably take it apart off camera. So this is your 2- and 4-wheel drive selector. So the chain rides on this gear right here, and this gear rides in that hub. And what happens is when you want 4-wheel drive, you slide that hub forward and it locks these gears to this gear. So we're going to take this apart and we're going to show you what it is. It's basically 3 pieces. So that's the gear I was talking about. The chain rides on the big gear, and that female coupler goes over these. So this is what they call your synchronizer, and you'll notice it's got like texture inside it. And the purpose of that is that just sits there and rides. This sits on here, it has to go a particular way. And you notice everything turns easy, right? And even if I push hard on that, everything turns easy. But if I push just a little bit on that gold, you see I can't turn it now. So the purpose in that, what's supposed to happen is when that range selector comes over here and hits one of these a little bit out of sequence, it puts a pressure on there and it kind of wedges everything together and gets it all synchronized. That's why they call it a synchronizer. Everything looks good there. We're going to go ahead and reassemble that. So this is probably going to be a 2-part video putting this together. We're probably going to try to keep them around 15 or 20 minutes. But I'm going to go ahead and get this back on the shaft and get our snap ring on, get that set aside. I've got some transmission fluid out here, and we'll just get going. All right, we're going to go ahead and stick our main shaft back together. And that's got a bearing surface here that rides on here. Not a bearing surface, just a smooth surface. So that goes in there like that. Something like that. And our snap ring goes on there. If you're doing a lot of this, doing this for business or something, you probably have some jigs set up. You can set this stuff in. And of course, I'm trying to do this so you guys can see what I'm doing too. So then what you want to do is just want to make sure it went down in the groove all the way around, and it did. So we're going to set that aside now, and we're going to start putting some stuff together. So I have things kind of methodically laid out. I'm going to go ahead and get, one piece at a time. I'm going to take my new input shaft and my old input shaft, and it's hard to see on camera, but these teeth right here ride on these teeth, and that's your 2-wheel drive. That's your high range, sorry. So when that's engaged like that, that's high range, and you'll see it's really hard to see on camera, but they're about 1/3 of the way worn down at an angle. So every time you step on the throttle, this by nature is going to want to push backwards because of that angle. So we went ahead and changed those two pieces. I think each one of these was like, I think this is like 70 bucks and this is 40 bucks. But we have this bearing that we have to put down in there. You'll see the bearing in that one. It's down flush with that space right there. So what I've done is I've got myself a socket that fits down in there. It fits all the way down into that cone. And we're just going to go ahead and drive it down in. We're down in there. We're happy with that. We're going to put a little bit of fluid in there. And this is not going to be a clean process, I can promise you. But at least it's cleaner than it was coming apart. So that's ready. I'm looking for another part. Looking for this. And that goes down in there. Looking for these. This. Remembering where I put everything is part of the problem. That's okay. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start putting our input shaft and our planetary together. I can get a little bit of oil in here now, and I'm probably not going to. I'm going to go ahead and put some stuff together, and then we'll come back to that. So you remember our fiber washers? The kit comes with 2 new ones. So we're going to go ahead and dunk that one. It sets in the groove. Like that. I'm going to put our input shaft down in there. Dunk our second one. Dunk our flat washer. Pull our fluid. And then we're going to put our snap ring in. And that one's pretty explanatory. It pops in, everything's done. Everything should turn easy when it's done. And remember, that's your four-wheel drive. So then we have to have this half of the case. We have an input bearing that needs a snap ring on it. And I don't know where my knives are. I have like 37 knives and I don't have one with me. I'm not a good Boy Scout for that. So there's a lot of variations of this DLD transfer case. And the variations all tend to size around this front bearing. This is the thinner of the 2 styles, I guess you'd say. So I have to reuse the snap ring, which everything's covered in oil now. That's our old bearing, that's our new. We've already kind of checked them out. The input shaft fits in it. So we're going to go ahead and put the snap ring on our new bearing. Just like that. We give our bearing a dunk. And that goes right in there like that. And our planetary comes up through there, and then we have a snap ring that goes on there. So I'm going to start a pile of used parts. So this is where it's helpful to have something underneath here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to find me a block of wood. I probably have to cut it. So we're going to stop the camera and I'll bring you right back when I have that. So I've gone ahead and I get a little blocking in here and I've tested it. What you really want is you want this planetary to bottom out in the case and have the case just stay off the table just a little bit. Cover on. Once you get everything lined up, it should basically fall in. You'll notice my bearing doesn't want to set down on there all the way. It's pretty tight fit. I'm going to assist it just a little bit. Okay, now we're going to see if we can get our snap ring down on there. This is probably the worst snap ring in the assembly. I say that and it goes right on first try. A good pair of snap ring pliers is worth their weight in gold when you come to this. So now what we have to do here, and we'll probably come back to this, but this has to have a seal pressed in it, and this piece has to go on there. But just in case we forgot something or something doesn't go right, we're going to go ahead and come back to that later. We did put our selector in here, and now we have to put this piece in there with this shift fork, and this shift fork needs new plastic bits. And again, I'm setting all my used parts over here and my trash behind me. Now you're going to find that the 4 small ones are identical and the 2 big ones are different. So we're going to go ahead and grab the right 2. I'm going to shut off the air conditioning because I don't need cold air blowing on me. And these just pop off. In theory, these ones have been pretty hot. So part of the reason these ones look so bad is because I run it out of fluid. The other part is because those teeth were cut at an angle, worn at an angle, and that was basically always holding pressure. So this fork is what holds this slider in and out of high and low range. So if those teeth are at an angle and the torque of the engine is pushing on that, it's going to always push on those there. So you'll see that's the one we want there, and you can see now how bad that really was melted and worn. We weren't far from being into the steel. So it was a good time to tear this one apart. Well, maybe not the best time, but you know what I'm saying. Those are in the used pile. We're going to give this just a touch of oil. We're going to give those just a little bit of oil. Again, I'm going to see if I can do this backwards. So this piece here has to go into a hole in this piece, and this has to go in here like this. It all kind of goes together at the same time. There we go. So everything's down in there now. So now what we're going to do, is I'm going to recapture my blocks of wood. So the next step is to put the front housing together. The front output shaft, I should say, which is this piece here. We have a bearing that goes in here from this side, and then the yoke goes on from the outside. The nut holds everything together. That is one of these bearings that I don't have. So I think what I'm going to do at this point, just because I know time is of the essence, and we don't use full drive hardly at all in this, I'm going to evaluate my other 2 output bearings. This is the front and this is the rear. And I'm going to see if one of those makes sense to reuse for this application. And then I'm going to go ahead and get this put together. So we're going to go ahead and stop the camera for a minute. I'm going to wash these two bearings up and evaluate them, and we'll bring you back when we're ready to keep going. All right, so we've gone ahead and put our better of our two bearings in here, and it feels all fine and everything. This one here is kind of dingy and looks like it's gotten hot. This was the rear output, and I have a feeling when we ran it out of oil, that one probably got damaged. This one down here wouldn't have been spinning because we have the the free spin kit on the front end. So the dry shaft would not have been spinning in this truck during that episode at all. So that would have really minimized damage to the front bearing, I guess you'd say. So we're going to go ahead and get this snap ring in here. Sometimes a well-placed tap with a hammer helps. That's all in. So then the next thing that happens is this goes down in through there like that. That's pretty much all there is to that. And then we've got a gear, our chain, etc., etc. So you can see that I put it up on blocks, so everything is kind of like hanging in the case. So this is going to go down in there now with that. Yes, I need this and this first. And this goes down like so. So if you're ever in doubt, what you look at is the teeth. You'll see this side of the teeth have like a rounded piece on them, and this side is square cut. The rounded piece is meant to go in like that. So knowing that that shaft goes in there like that, that has to go like that. So that's going to go down in there like that. We'll bring you back to that. We're going to change the bushings on this one because we have them. And these ones actually look pretty good, but they do get brittle with age as well. And then they can break and crack. And if you lose one of these, then you wear a hole in the fork. Well, not a hole, but you wear the metal off the fork, and that's not good for anybody. So we're going to put just a little dab of oil on all of that. And then I'm not sure how well Sue's going to be able to show you all of this, but we'll get that set in there like that. This goes down through the other fork into a hole in the transfer case, just like that. And then it rides on this thing right here. So that's essentially how we want it. And now we're ready to basically put our chain around this and around that gear and set everything in one fell swoop. So I'm going to get everything over here and ready so you guys don't have to watch, and we'll be right back. Okay, so a couple things I want to point out before we get too far into this, because I'm going to have my hands full, because you'll see in just a second. But there's these little pieces right here, and these pieces need to go right centered on one of these teeth. So as we go down in there, we need to make sure that, see every other tooth is missing off this. Makes it easier to go into four-wheel drive. We need to make sure that we have a tooth centered on that is all. So I just wanted to point that out. This gear can go either way. So we're going to go ahead and get that in our chain. We're going to get our chain in this one. And then we're going to go everybody down in, all in one motion. There we go. So I'm going to see if Sue wants to come around and show you what I meant by that. Probably see it better way over here, unfortunately. You'll see there's a tooth right here. There's a tooth right here. So if I'd have put this tooth right here, you see this would have been right in between two teeth. And the problem that that causes is it'll make it grind a little bit when it goes into full drive, because those are what meshes your synchros together. So then you just got to kind of monkey with it, and things will start to go into place. Maybe. just like so. Now, you're going to notice that things are way downhill right now. If you guys kind of scoot down a little bit and you look at the case to the chain, you'll notice the chain is down on this end. And that's because this has a snap ring up here in the tail shaft that holds it at the right distance away from everything. So for now, that's fine. We're not worried about that. We're done there. We have to put this snap ring on here before we forget it. And you could leave the snap ring installed, and you could take this whole shaft out as one assembly, but I find it's just way easier to break it down into less pieces. I will point out that when we did our two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, high-low selector disc, we did actually change the O-ring in the case. They come with all the O-rings, so we did go ahead and do that. So we're kind of at that point here where we're ready to start putting a case together. I think we're probably jabbered long enough, so we're probably going to wrap this video up and bring you back for part 2 of the assembly, which is where we put the other half of the case on. But this is where we're going to put our magnet in before we forget it. We've cleaned it all off. We're going to go ahead and we're going to oil up and install our detent with a new O-ring. And we will put our full drive indicator light back in a minute, things like that. But we're going to go ahead, we're going to wrap this up. We'll bring you guys right back for part 2 of assembly. And we'll get this thing put together and see what happens. So, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.